today. And with that, I will welcome onto the stage Simon from iboss, who's going to talk to you about how your SASE roadmap might come together. Simon.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to the attendees on the virtual platform as well. Wow, a real event. This is great to see real people. I think the last time I did one of these was 2019, so it certainly feels like a step back to some kind of normality. It's great to see real people. So yeah, the subject today, SASE, and what you and your organisations perhaps need to consider for building a roadmap to SASE if you haven't started, or even if you're mid-term in that transformation. And just out of interest, and because we have real people here today, who's actually familiar with the term SASE, or has a SASE project, or is considering a SASE project right now? Okay, a few, good. Well, so let me give you some background first of all. So SASE is an acronym coined by Gartner in 2019, but quite simply, it just means that it's a concept of converging network and the security stack, the things that we've been using in the past, to allow for organisations to adapt to remote working and a changing landscape. And that was, this concept was brought out in 2019 before the pandemic, but of course it's even more relevant now and has been since the pandemic started. And what that's meant is a lot of organisations have accelerated their cloud transformation projects and started to look at the concepts of SASE. So SASE means Secure Access Service Edge, and it's a concept of creating what we do today, perhaps inside our network perimeter in the cloud, to allow organisations to be much more flexible and to accommodate pretty much everybody who's doing remote working right now. So there's a little bit of background there. So I've got my slides in the wrong order. So first of all, let's think about the challenges that we're facing today in a modern world, and have been facing for the last 12, 15 months. And that's, the first thing is users have gone mobile. They're not inside our network perimeter anymore. They're working from home predominantly. But even before that, I think we had a lot of remote users that were we were trying to improve their productivity. So we were enabling them to work from hotels and airports and coffee shops. So it's a concept that's been around for a while, and of course with the adoption of SaaS and applications moving to the cloud, the whole concept of remote working has been quite popular for a while. So as these applications have moved to the cloud, it does mean that they're accessible from anywhere, but that also brings some other challenges around bandwidth. If we think about when everybody was in the office, it was quite easy to use our network tools to allow access to applications inside the network and outside the network in a controlled environment, because they were inside our perimeter, our network perimeter. And we had a certain amount of bandwidth, and we would purchase the correct amount of bandwidth to access public services on the internet. Now everybody's working at home, so some people in more rural areas may have less bandwidth, but generally speaking, especially if we think about the UK, Western Europe, everybody's got very good connectivity. And this really compounds the issue, because it's multiplied. The amount of bandwidth that's available to everybody, the expectations, the user experience, and the applications themselves all demand more bandwidth. And when people are working at home, it just compounds this whole problem about what's available. And then encrypted traffic. So, just about everything, I think. You know, the last statistics I saw from Google, it was certainly 99% in the UK. We're not quite at 100%, but it's going to happen. And I look after the EMEA and Asia regions, but just about everywhere I go, encrypted traffic on the internet is in the high 90%. So that's a challenge, because when we used to use applications inside the perimeter, we had good visibility. We had control over these applications, who could use them, what level of access they would have access to those applications based on their role within the organisation. And it was inside the perimeter, so we could keep it safe. The reason why encrypted traffic is a bit of a challenge is we need to inspect it. So if we think about the security side of the organisation, we're worried about risk around data loss for these remote users. We're worried about their endpoints getting compromised, malware, ransomware, phishing attacks. And to really be able to protect the endpoints, the users, we need to be able to look inside this encrypted data to ensure things like governance and compliance and reduce risk. And again, this has gone up exponentially. I think probably, from my experience, when organisations make that step over to something like Office 365, that's where organisations really become aware of how much encrypted traffic they have to deal with now that's leaving their organisation and going to the cloud. It can be quite a challenge. So what happens is network security needs to move to the cloud. We need to put our security stack, our set of security tools that we've always relied on to keep our users and our applications and our data safe. We need to move that into the cloud, which is where our data and our applications are moving to, and now where our users are as well, because they're all remote and they're outside the perimeter. So that's the challenges that we're talking about. So, step one, it'd be always good to start at the beginning. So the first thing I think we need to do is look at what we're doing today in our network. I think a lot of organisations, and I guess you all know, because you've been working remotely, so you all know perhaps what your user experience is like and how you're accessing your applications. But a lot of organisations have had to adjust very quickly to the pandemic, and what they've done is to keep their same security posture. They've ended up using the VPN, and they're bringing the remote users back inside the network to keep that same level of risk reduction, security posture, the ability to have visibility into what these users are doing inside and outside the network. So again, this brings a lot of challenges, because people have got a lot of bandwidth at home, and it's put a lot of strain on the infrastructure, on the VPN concentrators, on the network itself, and even the bandwidth in the organisational data centres. So I think, many organisations are still in this place. There's probably been some other pressing things that they've had to deal with during the pandemic. But certainly there's some things that we can do quite quickly to alleviate the strain. So if we look at the middle example here, which is more of a hybrid type approach to this issue, what we can see here is using, in this example, iboss Cloud, of course, but using a secure access service edge to offload internet traffic, to offload traffic going to SaaS applications, public applications from the VPN. So what we're doing here is we're moving our security tools into the cloud outside of the perimeter, and then we are using what we term a split tunnel approach, where we're using one tunnel to get back to the private network, the data center, where we may have some legacy applications that haven't moved to the cloud yet. And then we're using the secure access service edge to secure and make compliant access to public applications. So this can be very effective, actually. I think many organizations have moved to Office 365 or maybe G Cloud, and there's a lot of traffic. That if you look at your traffic statistics for those services, it can be a large percentage. So just by moving that traffic off of the VPN and getting direct connectivity, secure connectivity through the iboss cloud to those public applications, you can really improve the user experience and offload that traffic from the VPN. Where we want to get to eventually is perhaps is 100% cloud type architecture, where we use the secure access service edge to inspect and make compliant all access for any users going to any type of application, whether it's something like Dropbox or YouTube, Google services, whether it's a private application that still resides inside the data center, or whether it's a public application, Salesforce, Office 365. The idea here is that, the secure access service edge is the conduit for all users going to any type of service. And that's achievable today, as long as we plan our roadmap. So the next step is to really look at, again, our security estate. So we use the term here proxies. So I think many organizations have some kind of proxy server or have had a proxy server inside the network. We've used proxy servers traditionally for visibility, for the ability to look at inside encrypted data, to make it safe, to make it compliant, and to guard against things like data loss. So proxy servers have been around for a long time. I think they're part of the security stack. They normally sit inside the firewall, the perimeter security. And again, many customers are still in this situation where all of this equipment is still inside the data center, and the remote users are going to have to backhaul that data back through the data center to go through the security stack. Now, as we look at developing a secure access service edge, there's different techniques that different vendors will present. The thing is with SASE, when Gartner coined this term, they included a lot of functionality, probably just about every element of network security and cyber security into a feature set. And what's happened is it has made the industry a little bit confused, I would guess, because it means that many vendors are talking about SASE, but they all have different approaches. We think that we use a concept of containerization, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more depth, but using containerization, which is a software technique, allows us to isolate customers. So, one customer isn't mixing their data with another customer. And also, an offshot of using containerization means that we can move the security edge inside of your network. So I think with a lot of cloud solutions, it's a kind of a big bang approach. It's, here's a cloud solution, now I have to move all of my users and all of my applications to the cloud. We think that a security edge should be more flexible. Using containerization, we do have the ability to move these containers inside the physical network. And that gives customers a path to the cloud. It gives them the ability to move at their own pace. And in some situations, you may be working with restricted data, highly confidential data. Perhaps if you're a government agency, you may be prohibited from using public cloud services run by another vendor. And that's another reason why containerization is quite unique, because it allows us to actually extend into other clouds, whether it's your organization's cloud, Azure, AWS. It allows us to extend the edge, the security edge, into other clouds and into other networks. So that's a hybrid approach, but again, it's still a secure access service edge. It's managed and controlled from the cloud with a single pane of glass orchestration plane, but it can extend into other networks. And again, where we perhaps might want to get to at the end of this project is that we have everything in the cloud. We have a secure access service edge that's available to any user on any device, and it's 100% cloud. Personally, I don't think all organizations will go 100% cloud. I think we still will see the need for on-premise security devices, but I think the goal here is to lower cost of ownership and increase ROI in a way that allows our teams to be more flexible and to give end users a more consistent experience. I think, one of the things that I hear just from friends and family sometimes that have been working from home in the past year or so is can be quite frustrating for them. My wife's a nurse and she has to use an NHS system from home, and it's via the VPN, and sometimes there's a mobile signal, sometimes there's not. Sometimes she can get access to the application and sometimes she can't. And I think the ability to improve the user experience, to allow users more like a direct-to-cloud experience without backhauling this data is the ultimate goal of building a SASE solution. So, I think when we talk about security, compliance, governance, there's a lot of questions around cloud. What we've done in the past is we've had complete control of our security stack. We know where it is, we know what country it's in, we know where our data is being processed, we know what feature sets we have, and we can replace and upgrade these devices whenever we'd like to. That becomes quite difficult in the cloud, and I think there's a lot of questions from the governance departments. If you're under any kind of compliance, there's going to be a lot of questions perhaps from the auditors. So again, the concept of a containerized environment, really, it starts at the endpoint. We're creating something that is accessible by any user on any device. So we really shouldn't be worried about what devices are my users using. It could be a corporate-owned device, could be their own device. We may want to give users access to certain resources, maybe not all resources, but we may want to give access to some resources based on their personal device. And I think that's important, and many organizations have adopted some kind of BYOD strategy. And then the network itself, we should be network agnostic. We shouldn't really care what network the user's on. I would go as far as to say we shouldn't have different kinds of configurations if a user's in the office, inside our security perimeter, or outside. Everything should be the same. We shouldn't really care if they're in the airport, in the coffee shop, in the pub, or in the office. Everything should be consistent. User experience should be good. They should get exactly the same type of policy controls based on who they are and their role inside the organization, just like we always did when we ran everything on premise. So what we have here, what we're just showing here is the iboss Cloud SASE platform, and it really encompasses everything inside the SASE feature set. So we mentioned the proxy. The proxy is really the heart of the security stack often. It's given us visibility to allow things like data loss prevention, intrusion prevention, CASB, which is a newer concept, but CASB is something that allows organizations to get back visibility into what their users are doing when the application is public. When they were using the application inside the network, I knew what they were doing. I had an audit trail. I could control their access. When I'm giving them access to SharePoint, Office 365, who's using it? How much are they using it? How much time do they spend on it? What are they uploading? What are they downloading? How do I put some risk controls around that? That's where the CASB has come into play. Definitely very focused on cloud. And malware defense, probably the thing that we think about first. When we talk about security, I think we talk about malware defense, whether it's defense against something being downloaded with malicious code in it, a URL that may take us off to a phishing site, or something that's a popular topic, which is ransomware. These are some of the elements. There's more elements. And then the blue cubes on the right there, what they're representing is the containerized services. So each one of these containerized services actually has every one of those features built into it. But each one of those containerized services is dedicated for each customer and can live pretty much anywhere. It could be in your own data center, could be in an iboss data center, could be in the UK, could be in Singapore, could be in New York. But that's how iboss use containerization as a software concept to deliver a secure access service edge in the cloud to any endpoint on any network. So one of the interesting offshoots of containerization is this concept of isolation. And again, it's not the norm. If you look at other vendors that talk about SASE and their different approaches, sometimes it can be a series of different products that make up a SASE solution. Sometimes it can be something similar to the feature set that I've just explained. But the difference will be, if we look on the right-hand side here, is many of the security vendors have used approach of multi-tenancy. So if we think about something like Office 365, it's a multi-tenant platform, works really well because it's an application. And it makes sense that Microsoft would build an environment that can be used by multiple customers, and then they put the controls in there and the views so that each organization only sees their own data. It's a little bit different with network traffic. What we're talking about is flows of traffic going through a data center, and we're decrypting that traffic to get visibility. And while we're decrypting that traffic, it's going to be in clear text in the open. And that can raise some concerns around compliance and governance again, about how's my data protected, where's my data being processed, where's my data being stored. So multi-tenancy, we believe, wasn't the right approach for network security. So again, containerization isolates each customer from every other customer. So as data flows through Azure, our own data centers, your data center, is always isolated. So although the infrastructure may be, the physical building may be shared, the actual data plane itself is isolated from all other customers. And I think this is a really important point. And if you understand what's happening in the cloud when you're building your SaaS solution, you'll be able to answer a lot of questions that come your way from the other departments that may want to know, or from auditors. They may want to know how you're enforcing things like data sovereignty, and how do you know where your data is kept. So understanding how data is processed in the data center, I think is super important. I almost think of this as having your own private highway on the motorway, or having your own private lane. It just means that every customer has their own private lane on the motorway, and nobody's going to move and shift lanes, and nothing's really shared. So there are other advantages of this architecture. There are a few down the side here. I've mentioned privacy and security capabilities, but speed. Again, we talk about the user experience. Our end users are not always that concerned about security. They want to be able to be productive. They want to be able to collaborate with their colleagues, share information with their customers, and they want to do that in a fast and effective way. So again, as we look at the cloud service and how we're building our SASE model, we really want to look at connectivity. We want to know that the users are having a good user experience. So SASE is going to allow them to have a secure direct connection to their applications, but it needs to be fast. So there are a bunch of concepts around how we deliver that, but probably the most important things are how we peer with some of the major providers. So if you look at your data centers that you're going to use, you want to know that they've got good peering with Microsoft, with AWS, with Google, any other cloud services that your organization is heavily reliant on. You want to know that the connectivity between the secure access service edge and those applications has very low latency. Scalability, I think when we think about any cloud service, we automatically think about scalability. Again, things are a little bit different in the network and security world. It is actually different, quite difficult to auto-scale. How do we do it in the past? Well, we used to buy more tin. We used to buy more appliances. I've got a 100 meg internet line. I go to a 1 gig internet line. Got to buy a new firewall. Got to buy a new switch. Got to buy more bandwidth. And that's how we used to do. That's how we used to scale up. In the cloud, things are easier. Horizontal scaling is achievable, and it can be done very quickly as well. So that's the nice thing about any kind of SaaS service. Scalability is automatic. So, if I go back to the concept of containerization, and this is something that we always like to talk about because it's not always something that organizations will think about when they're moving their security to the cloud. And I like to think of when I go to the internet, when I'm inside the organization, I know that the organization has an identity, which is an IP address. So when I go and make a search on Google, when I log into Salesforce, that application knows who my organization is based on my IP address. A little bit different when we're at home because IP addresses can change. But there is an internet identity that's tagged to your organization. And we can use that. Today we can use that. Everybody's inside the perimeter. The organization has a set of IP addresses. So they have an identity as they use these services. What happens is with these multi-tenant services over here on the right is that, again, it's a shared environment. So you kind of lose that. You lose that individual identity as you use services on the internet. And what happens is customer A and customer B here, they may be using IP addresses that are intermixed. And one day, customer B is using an IP address that tomorrow customer A is using. So you kind of lose that ability to identify your organization. And many organizations have actually based controls around IP identity. There's a concept of Eappariello lists where your organization may be trusting another organization based on their internet identity, based on their IP address. And that's lost. And sometimes organizations only realize this part of the way through the transformation project, and it can be a real challenge. The other thing is many public applications now, and I think maybe Microsoft were the first to bring this type of feature out. They call it conditional access for Office 365. Conditional access can comprise of many things like the device that you're on and the geolocation that you're in, but it can also include the IP address. And what happens is, and many other cloud application vendors have adopted a concept of conditional access. And what it allows you to do is, it can allow you to close the front door on that public application and effectively make it private. So it's great that these applications are accessible from anywhere. They've improved productivity, but there is an element of risk, right? We've now got our data, we've now got our application in the public cloud, and it is accessible from anywhere. So how do we ensure that although the user may identify themselves, which is great, we need identity, of course, but how do I know that we're delivering that data that they're requesting to a trusted endpoint, to the right endpoint? So again, one of the features of the containerized architecture is that every customer and every containerized service gets a fixed IP address. So we retain that ability for your organization to bring their identity to the internet. And as long as your users are going through the secure access service edge, you'll be able to identify them based on IP, and you'll be able to use these features such as conditional access. And we think that's really important, and it's a growing trend as people are moving to the internet to try and find a vendor that can provide them with fixed IP addresses. And if any of you work in public sector and with government especially, the National Cyber Security Centre have a particular service called PDNS. And one of the requirements of PDNS is that they can identify you based on source IP address. So that's a service that we support and it's just down to this one feature here. So definitely something to look at as you're building your secure access service edge. So, the last step, with everything that we've considered, the type of technology we want to use, the type of feature sets we want to use, what do we want to achieve? What's the end goal here? Well, the end goal is that we've really moved all of our network and security tools to the cloud. We've allowed our users to access their applications, whether they're private or whether they're public, in a secure manner, in a fast manner, and we've improved the overall end user experience. One of the other terms that you'll probably hear coined alongside SASE sometimes is zero trust. So I think zero trust has been around for a long time. The concept here is that don't trust anybody with anything until they've identified themselves and we know what role they play with inside the organization, and we know what type of security policy that we should apply to them, what they can access, how they can access it. And again, bringing in elements of zero trust is much easier in the cloud because you don't need to micro-segment your network, you don't need to work with lots of different vendors. This can all be achievable in the cloud with your SASE platform. The default stance is no one can get access to anything until you identify yourself, until we know who you are, until you've gone through the security checks, the posture checks. Now we apply you in a policy that will give you access to the resources that you need, that your end users need. So hopefully that's where we want to get to. I think the various steps that we go through on this journey can be as fast or as processed as you need them to be. I think one of the elements that I spoke about before was the ability to be able to extend inside the perimeter will give your organisations time to migrate and have a staged type strategy for your move to the cloud for your network stack. I think that's quite important for certainly for larger organisations. So, secure access service edge, it's really the glue between the network and the security stack. What we're doing here is converging the network tools, the security tools, the cyber tools, visibility tools, and the secure access service edge is really the glue. So, the connectivity is how our users connect to services. And they do it in a variety of different ways now, with multiple different devices. They could be on Wi-Fi, they could be wired, they could be in different countries. But what we want to do is deliver a secure connectivity service. So I hope that helped. A quick update on iboss. For those of you that may not have come across us so far, iboss has actually been around for quite some time. I've been on iboss for about 7 years. We're a global company. We have over 100 data centers globally. We're processing now, we can't keep up with the slides, unfortunately. I think we're over 5 billion transactions a day right now. And it's incredible to see the amount of transactions that we're processing that have some kind of malicious content in them, or they're going to some kind of malicious destination. It's quite incredible. I think most organizations are going to move from millions of transactions to billions of transactions in the next few years as more and more applications move to the cloud. I think it's inevitable, really. So yeah, we have a very big cloud fabric. It's available in most countries. You can also use other clouds like Microsoft Azure. We operate in pretty much every vertical. I don't think we're missing too many, but certainly the verticals that are listed here, we have one of the top 3 customers in. So again, scalability is super important. I don't think none of us know how we're going to be operating and at what scale we're going to be operating in the future, but the ability to be able to scale is important. If we want to bring up a new office, if we want to replace all of our users' devices with different devices. If we want to allow remote working with personal devices and BYOD program, scalability is very important. Yeah, I think I've probably covered everything. I'll open it up for some questions, but hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully everybody knows what SASE and a secure access service edge is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Any questions for Simon at this point? The guys will be on the stand outside, so if you do pick up... Oh, we've got one from Noel.
Just a quick one. It hasn't come over totally clear to me, and perhaps I'm not getting something, but are we a replacement or complement to stuff that we've already got in place, like ATP, MDM, conditional access, etc.?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'll just repeat it for the virtual users. And the question was, is this a replacement or a complement for some of the existing technologies that you have? Well, it can be both. It can replace, absolutely. But I think, there's different security domains. You mentioned mobile device management that is normally around managing endpoints, which comes in the security stack. I think what SASE really comes down to secure connectivity. That's what it's really trying to achieve. So the elements that you mentioned, like firewalls, advanced threat defense, yes, it would replace them, and you would be moving those to the cloud. There's definitely some areas of security that may not come into the SASE model. If you look at the wheel, the donut, as I call it, that Gartner brought out, they crammed a lot in there. Identity, data loss prevention, malware defense. But the ultimate goal is providing end users, wherever they are on any device, with secure connectivity. So there will be some things that I think fall outside of that, but the majority that you mentioned there, yes, it would be a replacement. Welcome.
Any more for Simon? If not, please, do make sure you pop over and see the guys on the stand outside. I guess with that, Simon, we'll say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It's difficult to keep socially distanced while sharing a microphone. It's lesson one from today.